who believes in God would not say conclusive proof, the kind where you get by putting a piece of God in a test tube and concluding, yes, there is God. No. So what are the arguments that are used to say there's proof? And we'll just mention 3 or 4 major ones. And I'll just rattle this up. One is the existence of existence. Why is there something instead of nothing? We are not aware of anything in our physical universe, the universe we are aware of. This cosmos, if you use that word to mean the entire creation as we know it, we're not aware of anything that comes from nothing. Okay? We're not aware of anything that comes from nothing. And so for the universe as we have it, all we can say is it must have been caused. It must have had a first mover. So the fact that it, otherwise you'd have said there are some logical alternatives. Things brought themselves into being. But how can something that doesn't exist organize for its coming into existence when it doesn't even exist? Or another way of saying it, it happened by accident. How does nothing produce something? Where has that accident ever taken place that will make us feel, yes, that's another logical option? The only one we have is it was created. And so one argument is therefore that this universe was created. We'll come to the question of, okay, then who created the creator? But just for the sake of a quick answer, because I don't know who created the creator doesn't mean this universe was not created. I just don't know. Are we together on that one? Yeah. I don't understand the meaning of eternity. It just doesn't, I don't get it. When you say eternal, infinite, I honestly don't know what that means. What I do know is the laws of the universe. I also do know that some of the laws of the physical, the world out here, don't apply on the quantum level, on the subatomic level. Newton physics don't apply on that. There's more relativity, more uncertainty down there. So it would be a bit audacious, actually very unscientific of me to assume that the laws of this universe of cause and effect automatically apply outside the universe to the cause of this universe. So all I can say about the creator regarding origin, eternal, is, in religious language, it's ilm al-ghaib. It's knowledge that is beyond our perception. It's a reality we can't comprehend. It's like trying to force the ocean inside a cup. The finite cannot comprehend the infinite. And there's nothing you can do about it. And so, because I don't know where something comes from doesn't mean that thing doesn't exist. Okay, some would give example. If you go home and you see a fish on your bed, you're kind of like, how did the fish get on your bed? You say, I don't know. Therefore, there is no fish on your bed. No, there's a fish on the bed. So an explanation doesn't need another explanation to be true. This is a fact for the following reasons. Why is it? In every field of science, in every field, you can keep asking why, until you get to an area where, well, we need to do a PhD on that to know why. You don't say because we don't know why, then all the others are wrong. Are we together on that? Yeah. So the point I'm making here is the argument that this universe has a cause. So if you say, and this is a useful area, because what some used to say is the universe just is. It's eternal. It's always been around. That was before the Big Bang theory came up, and which gave enough evidence for scientists to say, okay, this universe actually has a beginning. it is presently rising like a cake is rising. And if you go back, it's the cake shrinking until it all becomes, all the time, that space, matter, energy, if you just rewind back 13 point something, nearly 14 billion years back, it comes to what they call one singularity, something that is believed to have been no bigger than the size of a proton. Everything compressed, unimaginable density. Where did it come from? And as it was rising, it was occupying what space? What was there before it that gave birth to what banged? Whatever caused that singularity, and wherever it came from, it could not, from our understanding, have come out of nothing, unless we say it came out of nothing we are aware of. But all that we can say is it is not its own cause. You can't be non-existent and you plan bringing yourself into existence, at least as we understand physics in our existing universe.
Just to jump in with some thoughts on this. You are right with the discrepancies between, let's say, cosmology versus quantum physics. The existence of the universe through the singularity is mathematically possible. So you can have actually Einstein's general relativity will provide for the existence of something out of nothing. So if something generally is mathematically possible, then it is possible. So you could mathematically generate something out of nothing.
Okay. If one takes that, we have no evidence that that's actually what happened. And we have not seen it happen anywhere. So while it is possible, from a theoretical perspective, it is what you call inconceivable that absence of a thing brings what we have into being. And so the argument that numbering could prove possibility is what some would describe as what in language would just be semantics. But I have so far not seen how the theoretical has at any level been proven as what happened. Now, even if someone were to explain, well, this is an equation for possibly bringing things out of nothing, the question still would be from not just matter and energy, time and space, but the laws that allow that to happen. When you say everything is governed by laws, the question goes, who's the lawmaker of the laws of the mathematical possibility? So it is pushing the argument beyond matter and energy to the laws that brought things out of nothing. In other words, if there's a mathematical formula, what pushes the fire in that equation? So first point is this issue of who's behind what happens. The second issue is, after we've had creation, what is the possibility that self-replicating life could also come by accident? Not just living things, that something has life, and through natural selection, we have a living thing. But the living thing came pre-packaged to survive and replicate. And the argument there is the probability is so infinitesimal that it is very unlikely that this could happen without an intelligent designer behind it. The third argument, which is similar to the first, is who made the laws that govern the universe? So not matter and things, but the laws that govern things. Because if laws are not living things in themselves, and the laws are not intelligent, they're not things, they're just like policies. Who makes the policies that make time and matter and particles and everything behave according to predictable laws, at least those we have studied so far? And even when things are described as chaotic, scientists have gradually reached the understanding that even when they call a field chaos theory, they don't really mean it's chaotic. It's just really, really complicated, and you need very powerful computers to understand the equations that are governing so-called chaos. That this universe is very, very fine-tuned. So much so that some actually use a metaphor of you're coming into a hotel room and you smell your favorite perfume. And there are clothes there that are your size, your color, shoes, your size, your preference. The books on the bookshelf are your preferred books. The music that is playing is your preferred. It seems that every illness, there's actually a cure out there for it, that things seem to be not just on the physics level of constants, but the universe is so orderly, it is predictable, it is studyable, and it is so fine-tuned as if it's been expecting beings that are intelligent. So this issue of the existence of existence, self-replicating life, the argument for laws of nature, the fine-tuning of the universe, some would actually bring the evidence of revelation. If the message of the Quran could not have come from the Prophet ﷺ, then where did it come from? It didn't create itself. Okay? So where could it have come from? And that's one argument that some have presented. So while each argument may not be sufficient as proof to stand on its own, combined, they become a stronger argument than the alternative arguments of, no, there is nothing behind the laws of nature, there is nothing behind existence, and it's all chance. And it's been around for eternity, which science... What's interesting actually in the way some... you find this quite common in this subject is, theoretically you will be told you follow the argument to its conclusion. That usually is fine so long as the conclusion is not leading to God. The moment the conclusion is leading to God, then it is not a valid argument. So before the Big Bang, it was a valid argument among some atheists to say the universe has existed in eternity. When Big Bang came along and no, there was a beginning, and then you say, then the cause of the Big Bang, God, was eternal, then they say, no, but you can't have an eternal being. You seem to have no problem having an eternal universe, with the laws of thermodynamics all working against you. Because if we had an eternal universe, then for most entropy, all temperatures would have finally come down to one level of equilibrium. Anything burning would have finished burning. Anything that was cold, hot, solid, everything will finally come to a standstill. That's not what's happening. And we know why. Because there was a beginning. So the idea of, and it has, anyway, I think I've said more than I should on that. Religious people fail in life. I think one has to pick what is the standard for success and what is the standard for failure. Is it happiness? From all studies so far done in the state, people who believe in God live on the average longer than people who don't believe in God. And studies have been done about this. Religious people have happier sexual and family lives than non-religious people. And this is research you can check online for. This is academic research in these subject areas. Now, is it because they believe in God, or because the belief in God facilitates going to church every day and a more communal life? Seventh-day Adventists live longer than most people. And they believe that the body is a temple of God, so no caffeine, no alcohol. And if you ask them, it's the guidance of their faith. And they live a very tight-knit communal life. So when somebody says religious people generally fail or don't succeed, I think it's useful to ask, what is the criteria? Is it that religious people are less charitable? What would you like to see in a human being? Yeah. If you ask me, in Nigeria and for many parts of the world, religious people have actually built more schools, hospitals, charities than anybody else. Than anybody else. The biggest motivation for people to help, the only institution that keeps reminding people, do good, help, forgive, be charitable, be forgiving, be generous, be humble. The only institution that keeps reminding people of that on a daily, weekly level is the religious organizations. So I think firstly would be, what is the criteria for failure or success in life? Purpose of jinns, humans, etc., etc. Why does God do what he does? It's difficult to answer. It's difficult to answer. When he does answer, and he says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, I have not created jinn and men except that they should serve me. That language sounds like our language. As humans, do you create anything that's not going to serve a purpose for you? No. Anything we organize is to fulfill a purpose we want. Anything we do. So, what's wrong if God does things? And things we do, I can do things not for my benefit, but for the benefit of my children. I can do things, so it's not that when God wants us, then what's in it for him? Even among us as humans, we don't do everything for us. So once we know God is independent, therefore not in need, and yet he does things, what other attributes of God are at work? So to the question of what's also interesting is, at least we can see that from humans. We'll come to the evil thing under the topic of suffering. When we say God wants us to serve him, what exactly is that service? And you find none of you is a true believer unless you love for the other what you love for yourself. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day should be good to his neighbor. The Prophet said, if you don't want Allah to be angry with you, don't you be angry with others. And the list goes on. When you look at the Maqasid Sharia, Maqasid summarize the whole why behind the Islamic way of life. Okay? And what are the main Maqasid? Anybody?
Protect life.
Protect life? Whose life? Human. Any other? Protection and promotion of wealth and protection of property.
Mind.
Honor, mind, prohibition of intoxication and anything that undermines your intellectual capacities. Religion, faith, protection of the freedom for people to practice, no compulsion. So we got faith, life, mind, children, which is what they call lineage or family, altogether, property, but then all the things you are told to stand for: justice, compassion. At the end of the day, at the core of this thing called worship, serving God, is khilafah. Is you're actually serving God's creation. You know, you have a reward for kindness to other creatures. So while we call it the purpose, God's purpose of creating us, we find that purpose, that worship, that servitude seems to all be centered around acts where this is God's compassion to his creation. Which is interesting when we come to the issue of suffering and evil. So that's all I'll say there. Can give it more thought. Evidence for the hereafter. What's the evidence for the hereafter? Nobody has come back. Okay? Is that good or bad? Would it be good if you could just go and come back? No? Why not? The ancestors, all of them, they can come back. Because it's sometimes useful to ask yourself, what if God had done it another way? Would that actually have been a better idea? Because we believe there's a purpose, and we know for sure that justice is not fulfilled in this world. One reason, it's like if you've got 2 oranges and you've got another 3 oranges, you don't have to tell a person you've got 5 oranges. We know you've got 5 if you have 2 and 3. That there are certain attributes of God that if this is so and this is correct, then we are not surprised that God tells us there's a hereafter. That if our life is to be evaluated and justice is not done here, and it seems that is deliberate, and we'll come to why would a perfect God not create a perfect world, because some of us feel that we should not have dunya. God should have just made paradise. Start with that. Don't test our faith. Don't give us free will to do right and wrong. Don't give me the ability to love or hate. Don't allow my actions to have any negative consequences. Then you say, but that's not dunya. When you get into paradise, then you can say, oh, why did God allow this? Why? Because you've been told that's a place that is supposed to be a reward for good. There are other laws that operate there we don't understand yet, and the Prophet made it clear. Not even the imagination of what it is actually like has been put into the minds of people. But we do have an idea that paradise is good and very good, and hell is bad and very bad, but probably not much more than that. So, evaluation of our purpose, justice, and a logical consequence of Allah being compassionate related to justice. The fact also that, and this is taking on from the case of, if the Quran is very categorical on certain things, things it describes that are not known or seen, whether it's scientific in nature of describing mountains as pegs, and that's a fact we have come to realize, or describing the progression of an embryo, which is a fact we have come to know. There are those that you could say this could mean this, it could mean that. But if the Quran has insisted on this, and we have enough evidence that it is true, and it has been repeated in every scripture of every revelation that there is a hereafter, then it seems just like evidence for God, there's enough to believe that that is true. So for some, evidence of the hereafter exists in the fact that there has to be a place, in a sense, ethically, it would not be fair that life ends here. Though we are not judging God. But it does make sense that there's a hereafter where justice is done. Why injustice, suffering? And I think we've answered most of this. This operates on the assumption that there shouldn't be the ability to be unjust. That the fact that you have free will, and so much free will actually, would it have been better if we didn't have free will? No. There is the kind of harm, and what we will call evil, that we see that just doesn't make sense. Usually it makes sense when it's from a distance, you know. And you can't have everybody staying alive, and. When it gets closer, it's more difficult to accept. And this is part of why in most religion there's the concept of qadr, of trust that God knows why he does his things. That I don't have to be intellectually satisfied by how God runs his affairs. And if I don't know why God does it, so a metaphor that some scholars use here is a land that has a king that's a benevolent king. He has been there long enough for the people to know he loves them. So they all know that. He's been there long enough for people to know he's aware of everything that's going on. He has told his people, if you see something wrong, stop it. Help each other. He's given them guidelines. But then you come to hear that there's a group of robbers in this society that have robbed a few houses. The king knows about it, but seems not to have done anything about it. Why hasn't he? One, you don't say because we don't know why the king does it, therefore there's no king. Because this is how some use this argument, that because I don't know why God would allow evil, therefore there's no God. No, that's an argument not on the existence of God. That is you not being able to compromise, or what's the word? Reconcile God's compassion and God being all-powerful. That's your inability. So, on the question of why is there some kind of wrong going on, we honestly don't know. What we do know is Day of Judgment is where all things that are not clear to us will be made clear, and we are told no one would be treated with the least injustice. That at the end of the day, everybody who has done wrong will be fairly acquitted. Anybody who has done right will be pleased, radiyatan mardiya. You will be pleased with Allah as he is pleased with you. So we can't answer everything regarding why this, why that. Some things we can answer. Why are there earthquakes? No, this is just tectonic plates moving. There's nothing about you taking it personally. You've come to live on an earth that have bacteria living just as you're living, and you have no problem eating chickens and whatever, and you are affected by the choices that others make, whether good, but accidents in the way they drive, and car tires puncture. This is a place where we live, we die. So this is not heaven. Fortunately, it's not Jahannam, it's not hell. So while there are some things that we call natural disasters that are not really natural, partly man-made, some are disasters in one sense but not another. When you say there's rain or there's flooding and it's a disaster, to who? To fish? To the next generation? When you say there was a landslide, was that good or bad? To whom? When you say there was a bushfire and that was bad, to whom? To the dominant species that has been oppressing all other species, and a fire is just ecological way of balancing and giving another species another chance. We live on Earth and we've got a lot happening. We don't know why everything happens. Some we are able, after studies, to appreciate that volcanoes are very critical to rainfall. Volcanoes ensure that new soil comes. Dust in the air creates the particles around which raindrops fall. We do need particles in the air. So there's a lot going on that you study and you appreciate more where you are, and you learn to work with these things. We become much better at predicting weather. And we've been given the ability to. Unfortunately, we spend so much time fighting each other instead of studying and helping each other. But yet we will still like to blame God for all our woes. So there are definitely some issues there that the concept, and this is in all religions, the concept of qadr is to give you a shock absorber to be able to handle some of these realities that just elude our comprehension. Why do I need God if I'm okay? I think that's partly answered. Who created God? I think we've answered that. The argument that some of these scholars make, firstly, there are about 6 approaches scholars take when evidence appears to be contradictory. One approach, when there seems to be contradictory evidence in the text, say for example, the implication of Allah's rahmah overriding his anger. How sure are we about that? And when it says things like Khalidina fiha abada, they will be in it forever, do we take forever literally? Means forever? Or does forever, is it taken metaphorically as just representing a long period of time? In language, if I say, you can wait here, but you'll be waiting forever for this guy, what do I mean by forever? Literally forever?
No, our forever is different from Allah's forever. Because Allah is, time does not, is out of time. So it's different.
No problem. I'm just saying, you got 6 approaches. One is to try and reconcile all this. And that's what they call Jama. You look at all the evidence and you understand each piece of evidence in such a way that you don't end up with a contradiction. Another approach is what they call naskh, abrogation. To just say, look, which one came later, we'll go with that one, and it abrogates what came earlier. Another thing they do is sometimes what they call tarjih. Which do we feel is stronger? And even if this is strong, we'll go with what is stronger and put this evidence aside and reach our conclusion. Another thing some scholars do is just to pick. I'm more comfortable with this evidence and that's my opinion. Another person says I'm more comfortable with something else and that's their opinion. Another scholar would just, it's wukuf. It's just, you know what, I don't know. Just suspend judgment. Others just, what's the word? The whole topic. Just there's no conclusion on this topic. The reason I'm mentioning that is the reason for difference of opinion on this issue is how they reconcile